Hey people, Ben Nash from Pivot Wealth here, and today I am pumped to be talking about what financial advice actually is. Look, this is something that I get a ton of confusion about from people that we talk to. I think a lot of people sort of think that they might need some help with their money potentially, but don't really know what to expect, what to look for, or the things that they should be thinking about if they're going down this path. So today I'm going to demystify a bit of that and help you guys understand what financial advice is, how it works, what to look for, and give you some tips on terms of next steps. So for the guys following along, if I could just get a comment to let me know that this is all coming through okay, that would be great.
Hey guys, my name.
That's me. Cool, awesome team, thank you for that. Cool. So in terms of what financial advice is, look, I'm going to crack into the detail, but guys, please don't rush out and make any life-changing decisions off the back of the day. I would strongly encourage you to seek out personalized advice before jumping in. You should be doing that anyway when you're making big decisions. This stuff is important, going to impact your situation for a long time. So guys, look, there's some pretty common challenges that sort of push people to seek out financial advice, but also money just generally. And these are the top three ones that I've seen here. Everyone's situation is unique, but I've found that there are three main things that impact people, which is this information overload. There's so much noise out there. It's hard to know who to listen to, who to trust. You've got a bunch of conflicting opinions, hidden agendas, mixed messages. People struggle to really find the balance between getting ahead with their money at the rate that they want and living the lifestyle that they want. And it often comes at a trade-off. And then you've got this fear of making a mistake, pretty common, that no one wants to do the dumb thing that costs them a bunch of money, that they end up paying the price for. And then you've got the fear of missing out, a fear of making mistakes. So what I say is that these three problems lead people to get stuck, and it's stuck, not always stuck doing nothing. It's stuck doing the same things that you've been doing in the past. And often that means that you're missing the opportunities to be getting better results and getting more out of what you've got now. So I'm going to talk a bit more about what to look for with financial advice, but I wanted to firstly talk about why this is important. And I've got this example here around investing that talks about basically starting with $0 today. So if you're looking to invest and you've got $0 to kick off with, and you save $10 a day and invest into the share market average. So like what you see on the news at night, that they say the ASX is up by X% or whatever, or down or up. It's up today, down yesterday. You can invest into that. That's just called the general sort of share market average. And if you save $10 a day, so 365 days in the year, $3,650 a year, over 10 years, you would have invested $36,500. So 10 years, $3,650 a year. And over that 10-year period, you would have then got some dividends on the money that you've, the dividends on the shares and stuff. And then you would have got a bit of growth as well. These, we know that the past doesn't predict the future, and et cetera, et cetera. But if you'd done this for the last 10 years, then this is what would have happened. So you'd have about $57,000. Then you see 20 years, you put in another 36 grand, but it's now you see that the amount that you've got is starting to compound and escalate. You've got $195,000 now. 30 years, you would have put in just over $109,000, but now you've got about $500,000, which is pretty cool. And in 40 years, you put in $146,000, but your portfolio is almost 10x now at 1.3 million. Now, that's the power of compounding. And you might say, well, what's this got to do with advice? And I think that one of the things that I've found is that advice can help you get started with this stuff sooner, because the sooner you start building the momentum. And you can see from the numbers that are here that the biggest benefits that you get is really in the last sort of in every period. It's like the last 10 years that you hold it, you get the biggest gains. So I've contrasted that example with another the same scenario, but where for the first 10 years, you just do nothing. You sit on your hands, you're paralyzed with indecision. You don't know what to do. You don't have someone to push you. So you end up doing nothing. And you see then how the results extrapolate over time. And now what you'll notice is that after 20 years, you're in the same position that you were after 10 years. In the first scenario, the numbers are all the same. It's just all 10 years later. But when you compare between the returns in like the results in year 20 from getting started today, it's 195,000 versus $57,000. So like more than triple. And then you've got 195,000 after 20 years compared to 500,000 if you would have started a bit sooner, and 500,000 compared to 1.3 million over that 30 to 40 year period. So this is it's the power of compounding, but it's also the power of just taking action and getting started. But sometimes without the right support, without the push in the right direction, it can be hard to push through some of those fears that I mentioned that and actually make it happen. So guys, I'm going to talk about the basics of financial advice because there is a lot of confusion out there. The first thing is around what people think that financial advice is just about investing. They think that's all that it is, but it's much more than that. What financial advice is about investing, of course, saving and cash flow, so having a good saving system and strategy, tax planning strategies, property strategy, your debt strategy, risk management in your plan, financial project management, estate planning, saving you time through outsourcing, and goal and target setting as well, which is really important to drive your motivation. And it's like we've been doing a lot of work recently with athletes, and I've sort of come to the realization that there's a lot of crossover between elite performance in sport and elite performance in your career and elite performance with your finances. That it doesn't matter how many push-ups you do, or maybe can in a sort of a way, but doing push-ups alone is not going to make you into a professional athlete. It's like responding to emails is not going to make you kick butt in your career. It's like to get to an elite level of performance with your money, to get to a really solid level of performance, you need to use frameworks and systems and have all of the things working together for you and heading in the right direction, because it's the power of all of those things combined that really give you those awesome results. So look, a good performance approach, and this is what I mentioned, this is what I was just talking about, that saving and investing is like the building blocks of being financially successful. But it's not just savings and investing that it's alone. If you want to get to that elite performance with your money, you need to have a clear plan, proven framework, great systems, and expert support in your corner. And I'll talk a bit more about how you can choose that, because without support, you end up just caught in this constant juggle. You have no visibility on where you're headed. Like, what is it? What actually, like, if you keep doing what you're doing today, what results should you be expecting, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now? And are you on track to achieve the level of financial success or the financial results that you want? You don't know where your risk is coming from. And if you don't know where your risk is coming from, if your risk is unknown, then it's a scary ride, because you're facing risk that it's almost like the known unknown, that you know that there's something there, but you don't know what it is. So you end up really stressed out. You end up in this trap of inertia and indecision. And we, as humans, we tend to stick to our default settings. And because we're all busy and sort of life gets in the way, plus money is confusing, you end up just stuck in this drifting sort of paralysis where you're not actively engaged in doing the things that you need because you don't know what to do. And you get caught in that indecision trap. You end up with no motivation because you don't have clear goals, targets, know where you're headed. And it's all of those things that drive you to actually push and do the things that you want. Being successful with money generally means applying discipline and saying no to things now so that you can have more stuff in the future, because the most fun thing to do with your money is to spend every single dollar you have and a little bit more for good measure. But doing that is not going to lead to financial success. And without the right support, you don't have the motivation to do the things that you need to set up your future. You end up missing opportunities because you don't know what the opportunities are that you should be taking advantage of. And I get that, because it's hard. There's so many things out there that you need to be aware of that it's almost impossible for one person to know all of those things on their own. You end up making inconsistent progress. So sometimes it's good, sometimes it's not good. And it's variability, which again can be a frustrating journey. You lack confidence in what you're doing because you're missing, because of all of the things that I mentioned, missing opportunities. You've got no clarity. It's hard to get that confidence in what you want, and the confidence is a key element of true financial well-being. And you work getting average or poor results in the end. You might be doing okay, but if you're lucky, but if not, then you're potentially doing poorly. So I wanted to step through this process, which is it's a process that we use when helping people with their planning, but it's the same process that every person should use if you want to set up a plan for your money. And I'll step you through the key elements. The first one up here is that you've got to focus in on what's actually important to you. So what does a great result look like when it comes to your money? What's really important to you? And what are the things that are not working quite the way that you want them to? That becomes your hit list in terms of the things that you should be focusing on, either with advice or with your money generally, to move you closer from where you are to the ideal position that you want to be in. And once you do that, the next stage to actually put a plan into place, you've got to understand all of the moving parts that are going to impact your plan. So what money's coming in, what money's going out, where's it going, how do you manage that? Then you need to sort of look a little bit ahead to say, well, what are the lifestyle wants, or what are the things that you want to make sure that you've got the ability to do in the near term and over time if you want to do them. So if you're maybe starting a family, changing jobs, starting a business, all of these things that you've got the non-negotiables for you, for your lifestyle, and ultimately money is a tool to help you to live the lifestyle that you want. If you don't put them into your plan, then you're potentially not going to have the ability to do them when it comes time to do that. So put that baseline in. And then the next element is looking at the different strategies that you can use to take you from where you are to where you want to be. So generally it's buying shares, managed funds, ETFs. I put them all into the same bucket. You could probably put crypto in there as well. Buying property is part of that. Investment property, own home, whatever. There's a bunch of different ways to do that. Paying down debt is one of those strategies. Cranking your super and saving money in cash. So it's those 5 options that you could look at. And generally it's like a combination of those things that make sense for most people. So understanding what the financial impact of those different pathways are is going to be helpful to allow you to balance the financial results against how it feels, like the peace of mind, the confidence. How do you feel about buying shares versus buying property, buying your own home versus buying an investment, putting money into super versus putting money into a bank account? All of those things that they do have a feeling attached to them. And if you're not looking at the numbers, then you're based on the feeling alone. If you're looking at the numbers alone and ignoring the feeling, that's not a good outcome either. So normally what happens when you assess your options and balance the numbers against what's not in the numbers, you're going to be more drawn to one pathway than the other, than another. You're going to feel that one gives you the right combination of the financial outcomes as well as the peace of mind and confidence that you want. Once you know what that strategy is, then it's about putting it into the action plan. Like, what are the 27 steps that need to happen to turn this great plan, this great strategy or great ideas into great outcomes? And yeah, so put the plan in place. Once the plan's in place, you want to automate as much as humanly possible so you can really set your default strategy as success. And then you can just get on with the things that are important to you, knowing that your money is bubbling away, doing what it should be in the background. And that's 1 to 5 there is getting you a clear plan and having the track to run on. Once you've got the plan and the track to run on, the next step is that you want to execute on that plan on an ongoing basis and make sure that what you're doing with your money, what you want, that it's all remaining consistent with your plan and what's going on in the world, financial markets, investment markets, property markets, all of those sorts of things, because these things change quite quickly. So when they do change, if they change in a way that makes them inconsistent with your plan, then your plan needs to change. It's as simple as that. So unfortunately, there's no such thing as a set and forget money strategy these days because everything is changing so quickly. But that process is rock solid. It's a basic sort of basic in one way, consulting framework where it doesn't really matter if you're planning with your money or planning your IT security strategy or planning what you're going to do on your next holiday when we all get out of lockdown. But it's when it comes to your money, that following this approach is a really solid way to tackle things. Now, depending on how much you've got going on, it depends on how much of it you can do yourself and how much you can get value from having someone else that knows all of the things to look out for to help you with. So when you do that and follow this process and do it in the right way, you end up, one, simplifying your day-to-day. You get clarity and visibility because you can see the financial outcomes that you're working towards, and you can make sure that you're happy with them and tweak things if needed to get to the ideal position that you want to be in. You can include smart risk in your strategy, and there's risk attached to everything. You know, buying shares has risk attached to it. Buying property has risk attached to it. Buying crypto has risk attached to it. Doing nothing has risk attached to it as well. So understanding first what the smart risks are for you, because the right risks are different for every person, is going to allow you to make sure that you've got plenty of the smart risks in your plan and you're avoiding those risks that are not right for you. Another big result and an important one, it sounds obvious, but actually taking action and putting yourself in a position to take confident action, because it's action that drives results. The next one is giving you the motivation to make it happen and the motivation to follow it through, which should not be understated. You'll end up maximizing all of the opportunities when you get this right, maximize all of the opportunities that are available to you to get every bit of juice out of your situation, essentially. Optimize from a tax perspective, doing the right thing with your debt, your investments, all of those things. And that leads to predictable progress. So you know when you can do the things that you want to do for the future, where that should be heading, and you can get certainty around that. Again, that sort of leads into confidence and making sure that you've got peace of mind, that you know that there's nothing that's being missed with your money, and you don't have to have that niggling thought in the back of the mind that there's something missing, that you're missing out on, or something more that you should be thinking about. And that ultimately leads to you getting results when you're taking that action and doing the things that you should. So guys, look, in terms of when it comes to financial advice, there are different types of advice out there. And I'll run you through what each of them are. Some of them you are getting more and more scaled and tech driven, which is great to see. And I'll also give you some of the things to look out for in the ones that have a few more moving parts. So the first advice model that we see is about product selection and setup. And so that's where, if you just want to get maybe an income protection policy or a life insurance policy, or you might want to just open an investment account or an investment bond, or look at your super fund or something like that, where you've got a specific, I just want this one particular thing looked at, product selection and setup. And the reason that I'm running you through these advice models is because if you go to look for financial advice, you should be clear on what sort of advice it is that you want before you jump in, because that's going to save you a lot of time and make sure that you end up getting the right results and you're happy with the outcomes that you get from that process as well. So the first one is the product setup. The second one is really specific problem solving. So you might have you might get made redundant from your role, for example, where you get a termination payment and you want to look at the tax position as a result of that. Or it could be that you have an employee options plan and you get offered to do a buyback on that options plan, and you're trying to figure out how to best manage the tax around that, and you just want to do some tax planning or something like that. Another financial advice model is just for investing money, and all comprehensive advice, which I'll talk about in a sec, includes investment strategy as one part of it. But when you just want investments, it's like if you're in the situation where you say, look, maybe you get an inheritance or win lotto, or I don't know, mum gives you a gift or something like that, and you say you've got $100,000 and you just want to invest that money. That's investment strategy only advice. Then you've got property strategy, and there are some people that just want to focus on property and almost like look at that, the way that they can build wealth through property as quickly as possible without looking necessarily at it as part of their overall financial and lifestyle goals. And then you've got comprehensive plan, like what I call comprehensive planning, where basically that process that I went through before, where you're looking at every element of your financial situation and figuring out a bit of a plan, maybe doing some modeling or projections off the back of it. And I've got the light on here because it depends on how far you want to go. And I think it's the next model is comprehensive, like real comprehensive financial planning. And I think that's worth being aware of. Now, obviously, I'm totally biased because at Pivot, we do this, deep dive comprehensive planning. But what I've found, and I being someone that's really passionate about great financial advice and the benefits that come with that, I talk to more people than I would like to that have got financial advice in the past and not got the results that they want. And a lot of times what that can come down to is that people, they might see a firm and they talk about doing all of these things and helping with their whole financial strategy, but they're almost doing it just below the surface level. And because they're not really diving deep and stress testing that, it means that you can end up not being set up to get the results that you want. One example that's coming to mind is that if you do a budget, like a lot of financial planning firms will say, hey, tell me how much money have you got left over each week or month? And you might say, oh, I can save $1,000 a month. And they say, okay, great. Well, with that $1,000, you can do X, Y, and Z. Now, real comprehensive planning is where you do a detailed budget and then someone actually stress tests that with you to say, hey, this thing looks like it's been missed, or this thing might be overstated, so that when you get to the end outcome that all of the things have been considered, so that you're not just it's not someone that's just relying on you thinking that it's $1,000 a month. Because when you're making small decisions, that might be a little bit less important. But if you're trying to buy your dream home, or setting up to take a year off work for maternity leave to start a family and stuff, or starting a business, or even if you're at the back end of your asset building and wealth creation journey and you're looking to wind back from work, then you don't want to be getting those decisions wrong. So having that deeper dive in those situations can mean that you know that all the bases are covered. And ultimately, that's what sets you up to I suppose, bulletproof the results that you want to get from the advice process. Some of the mistakes that people make when it comes to getting financial advice, I think that worth calling out so you know how to avoid them. So the first ones I've got are like early on in the start of your journey around financial advice. The first one here is losing momentum. And that's where we see this, like, people get all pumped up. They might, they read some stuff online or something happens in their life and they think, geez, I need to actually do this now. It's been long enough. I want to solve these issues or whatever. And as a consequence, they do start taking some action, but then, the emails come in, life gets in the way, and you end up losing that momentum. And then before you know it, a month, 6 months, a year's passed and you're still in the same position. The other one that I see for people early on is that they think that they just need financial advice. And there's like 20,000 financial advisors out there, but they look for someone that isn't an expert in solving their specific problems. So if you're a tech worker with an employee share purchase plan and you options plan and RSUs and stuff, you've got specific problems, and they're different to someone that's about to retire, or someone that's a business owner, or someone that's doing XYZ. So you want to find, if you've got specific needs, whether you're aware of them or not, you want to find someone that's an expert in your problem. And one of the things that you can do to tease that out is if you're talking to a financial advice company or doing your research, or a financial advisor, that you ask them, because you may not always be aware of the problems that you are facing, but you say to them, like, what are the key problems that you generally see or solve for people in our sort of situation? They should be able to give you a pretty good sense of that. People choosing the wrong fee model or a low fee model. And I think that you've got to, you can't, when it comes to advice, you can't pay silver and get gold. It's like if you walk down the street and saw a Ferrari on sale for $50, it's, that you're not going to necessarily get what's on what you think you are. So if someone's telling you that they're going to do all of these things for you and they're only charging you a few $100 or $1,000 or something like that, then you've got to think about, well, how much time are they going to actually be able to put into this process? And what does that mean for the outcomes that I've got? So people sometimes compare on price and look and say, this is what I think I should be paying, but they don't compare it against the value that they're actually getting, or the inputs that go into it. So it's something that you should definitely be aware of. The other thing that mistake that people make at this point is that they fall into the trap of thinking that money should be easy, because money, you get money in your bank account every week, month, or whatever, that you think it should be pretty simple. Unfortunately, everything is so complex these days. Like the rules around investments, there's like 10,000 plus different investment options in Australia. Then you've got super funds, bank accounts, strategy, and then you've got all the personal stuff that sits on the top of your money strategy that drives what makes it a great decision for you. So there is, even for people that might be pretty, what you would say, straightforward in terms of the things that they've got going on with their money, there's a lot of different moving parts when it comes to setting up a rock solid money strategy. So don't fall into the trap of thinking it should just be simple. Again, and I sort of touched on this before, that another mistake that people make is thinking that it's only about investing. Investing is just one small part of a big plan, of your big plans for money success, or your overall money management strategy. Just investing on its own, as I say, one element, but it's not going to do everything that you want it to do. You've got to do investing as part of your strategy, as part of your debt reduction, confidence, risk management, all of those things together. Again, assuming low complexity and that things are simple. So after, the next group of mistakes that we see people making is after they get started on the financial advice, like starting to sort of do their investigations, research, talking to some people or whatever. People end up, they jump into the process, and if you don't spend enough time thinking about what you actually want, it's hard to assess what advice might actually make sense for you. It's hard for you to know what you should be looking for, what strategies might make sense, or what sort of advice or advice company might be able to best support you. So how you get around that is obviously just thinking about the things that are important. And it doesn't have to be a financial thing, but it could just be something as broad as, hey, we want to end up in a position that where we can see where we're headed financially and make sure that we're happy with that. Or it could be that you want to work towards a specific income from investing, or whatever that is for you. But being clear on what you want is going to mean that you can assess, when you start going down this path, against what is, what is actually important to you. The next mistake that I see is people not educating themselves around the approach to advice, because every firm does financial advice a little bit differently. And if you don't take the time to understand what the people that you're talking to do differently, it's going to be difficult for you to compare against them. But also, even if you just find one firm and you know that you're going to go with them, understanding what they do is going to allow you to know how to get the most out of the process. Because with anything important, the more you put in, the more you're going to get out. So even if you know that you've got someone that's rock solid, take the time to say, well, what are the things that I need to do and when? What are the things I should be thinking about at each of these stages? Because then you can squeeze the most juice out of your financial advice process. Another mistake that I see, and we get this question all the time from people, that they want to say, well, what is my plan going to be? And I think that if you're looking for comprehensive advice in particular, any financial advice company that says they can tell you what your plan is going to be before you go through the planning process clearly has a predetermined outcome in mind. And I think that one of the key outcomes from a financial advice process is helping you really understand what your options are and educating you around how to appropriately assess those options. So while we always know what the key options are for people, and I mentioned them before, buying shares and managed funds, ETFs, buying property, paying down debt, cranking your super, saving money in cash, to tell someone exactly what they are going to choose as a result of the plan, it's really just impossible. We'd be guessing. So don't think that you need to know what it's going to be before you jump in. What you should be thinking about is, how are you going to help me decide between the options that are out there, and what do people typically do in my sort of situation? And any advisor should be able to answer that. that will give you a bit more of a sense. But ultimately, you've got to sort of lean into the process so that you can figure out what that actually is for you. Again, for people that start engaged, it's easy for life to get in the way. You lose that momentum, and you end up again in that inertia type stage that I mentioned before. Another mistake or a bit of a myth really that people face is this right time fallacy. And it's like, I think, starting a business or starting a family, like these big decisions that people can fall into the trap of thinking, hey, I should wait until I get that pay rise, or until I get my mortgage down to this level, or until my savings builds up to this level. But oftentimes, good financial decision making, good financial planning is going to help you get to that point faster. And the reality is that when you get there, there's probably going to be something else that happens. So that's going to mean that then you just keep kicking the can down the road, and all the time you're missing opportunities to be getting more out of what you've got now. The other mistake that I see people make when they engage is not assessing the benefits of the advice models themselves. So when it's like acute need versus product advice versus comprehensive advice, or light comprehensive advice, looking at the actual benefits, and the benefits come in a bunch of different ways. There is the financial benefits, so the investment upside, the tax savings that you get, all of those things. But then you've got the peace of mind benefits, the confidence and the clarity, motivation. Like, how much of a price can you put on being more motivated to work towards your goals? It's probably going to help you get where you want to be faster and easier, and enjoying the journey more as well. So you want to really assess, like, what are the real benefits to you, so that you know what makes the most sense for you. Again, falling back into that simplicity myth that people can engage, and then they're like, oh yeah, I need to someone to guide me through, and then go, oh, actually no, hold on, it should just be easy, and then again paralyzed or off track and missing opportunities. And not bringing your partner into the fold as well. If you've got a partner and you guys are working together to the same financial goals and heading in the same direction, you've got two sets of opinions that are really important when it comes to your financial decisions. So if you're just trying to figure it all out on yourself, it's going to be you imposing what you think is important on your partner, and that's generally not very. It's not a very productive way to get there, because you've got one person that's done all this work and gotten behind what they think is best, and then you're trying to sort of figure it out with your partner. I'd see it doesn't work as effectively as getting you guys both aligned, empowered, co-creating your plan, making those decisions together, and then that you've got you're working towards that. You can be excited instead of one person being the person that's pushing the other to do these things, or not understanding, and you can both have confidence in what you're doing as well. The next sort of set of mistakes that I see people make is around when they're deciding on the people or the business that's going to help them with their money. The first one, and I touched on this a little bit before, which is comparing on fees alone. That is a mistake, because like anything, you need to think about the outcome that you're getting and the inputs to get there. These are not apples for apples comparison. So yes, it is important, but it's not the only important thing. Again, losing momentum, wanting to know the outcomes again before you jump in. That decision paralysis, trying to figure out, you're like trying to suss it out, and you get a vibe, and you probably know in your gut which path you want to go down, but you may be afraid of taking the leap, and then you're that inner voice, and like it's often limiting beliefs and stuff is sort of holding you back, and you end up spinning your wheels, and sometimes you just put it in the too hard basket, and ultimately then again you stalled and missing opportunities, thinking things are simpler than they are, and fear around taking some sort of leap. Now, this is one I see a lot, and spend a lot of time around learning around our money psychology, money decision making, limiting beliefs, all of that sort of stuff, that there is a big fear for people in jumping into this path. Part of that fear, I think, comes from the fact that we, to lean all into money success, that it often means that you've got to sort of delay this gratification today for future gratification, which can be a little bit daunting. Also, the fear of the safe And this is, I've been interviewing a bunch of people on the podcast recently, and one of the things that stuck with me was talking around fear and success in the workplace, and saying that fear often it's the safe option, but when you not making that investment or not buying that property or whatever, that's a safe thing today. But what it stops you from doing if you don't take those elements of considered risk and action is that you end up missing out on the opportunity to play a bigger game. It's only though taking those steps that's going to allow you to grow your assets wealth so that you can be more financially successful in the future. So you have to make some sort of commitment and take a leap to get there. Now, that being said, you want to make sure that your leap is a smart one. So do your research, do your due diligence. Listening to this sort of content is a good start to get there, so that you know what questions to ask and what things to look out for, so that when you do take the leap, you've covered all of the bases. So you're not just leaping blindly, but at some point you need to take that leap, as I say. So how to choose an advisor, some of the tips and things to look out for. First, you want to find an expert in your problems. So someone that can solve the issues that you're facing, that does it day in and day out. It's going to give you a much better chance of getting the outcomes that you want from the advice process. Someone that uses an aligned fee model. So I'm totally biased because we have a way of doing things, which I obviously think is the best way, because that's why we do it the way that we do. But we believe in a fee for service model where we charge a fixed fee to cover the work over a period of time with our clients. And one of the advantages of a fee model like that is that when someone engages in that sort of service or that sort of fee model, is that our only motivation now is to make sure that they're really, really happy, so that they work with us for a long time and tell all of their mates. Whereas if you work with someone that gets a commission based on you buying a property, buying an insurance policy, or whatever, then it's really going to potentially take away from the confidence that you get in their advice, because you know that they're only getting paid based on the outcome that you choose, which can make it difficult for them to be impartial. But even if they are the best and most ethical advisors in the world, it's going to take away from your confidence. So you want to find someone that's got a fee model that's aligned to the outcomes that you want from the advice process. They need to be able to charge enough to deliver on the outcomes that they're promising you. That's really important. And again, a lot of people sort of overlook that, but they have to charge enough. Or you're just not going to get the service you want, or it's going to be surface level and not deliver. You want to, again, and it's partly into the fee model and charging, but asking about relationships and conflicts. So one way that sometimes people can charge less is if they're getting paid from other sources, like they've got related business, the accountants next door, the property people, self-managed super fund account, and all of those things. Ask them about those relationships, because the advisors and advice businesses are required to disclose that. And then at least you can make an informed assessment before you jump in, again, thinking about what the impact might be on the advice and support that you get. You want to have an advice firm that's going to work with you efficiently, because the more efficient they are, essentially the less they need to charge you. If you've got someone with an inefficient process and someone that's trying to do all things for all people, it's going to be hard to create a scalable advice model. And we're seeing, not to bore you with the ins and outs of financial advice compliance, but we're seeing a massive, massive increase in the cost to be an advisor, to hold those licenses and registrations, that if you're working with a business, like these businesses are under pressure. And if you're working with a business that's trying to do everything for everyone, that doesn't have a clear process, they're going to be either unprofitable, which is not sustainable for you in the long term if you're trying to build a longer term relationship, or the process is just going to break down. And again, you're going to have a poor user experience. Targeted service model sort of ties in with that. So someone that's streamlined, solving the problems that you want solved. And the other thing that you should do when you're choosing an advisor is ask a ton of questions. So any good advisor will be comfortable to answer all the questions that you've got. So ask as many questions as you need to feel confident about your decision, that you understand the process end to end, how it's going to work, and think through what that means for you. Do your due diligence, but don't be afraid to make a commitment. I feel like I probably don't need to spend more time on that one, but yeah, you've got to make that. You've got to make that commitment ultimately. Now, guys, I'm going to, in terms of next steps, I just want to leave you with this model that unpacks a bit about some of basically how people progress from where they are today to where they end up in the future. And I won't go into the ins and outs of it, but essentially what it says is that in the future, you're going to be in one of four positions, essentially ranging from really bad to really good. Now, when people think about their progression from where they are to where they want to be, they think about it like a straight line. But because of the compounding impact of time and money, it's essentially a curve. Which sort of, because of exactly that compounding, that goes up exponentially. So if you're not quite on track to end up where you want to be in the future, that there are some things you need to do to jump the line. You need to make sure you're optimized from a tax perspective, doing the right thing with your debt, your investments, all of these things that once you end up on that line, you can just follow the bouncing ball and just keep taking the next step and the next step and the next step, which becomes easier. But the longer you leave it, the more difficult it is to make the sacrifices that you might need to get the results that you want. And you might end up cutting yourself off to some options if you leave it too late. I used to see this a bit when I was working, when I first started in financial advice, that I was working with people that are getting closer to retirement. And for them, sometimes they leave it to like their 50, 55, 60th birthday. And depending on how long they wanted to be working for, they might have some really aggressive sort of goals in mind in terms of retirement. But the numbers just don't stack up. And then you're having to make really difficult decisions. So the sooner you jump the line and get things on track to end up where you want to be, the less those sacrifices are and the easier it is to get there. So that's my motivational talk, to take action and make it happen. Guys, I hope you found that one helpful. I'll leave you with this quote from Derek Sivers, which says, if information was the answer, we'd all be billionaires with perfect abs. And it sort of talks to the power of taking action and making things happen. Guys, obviously, this is what we do. So if you want to talk about how we might be able to help from a financial advice, or even if you just got general sort of advice questions, feel free to jump on and check out that link. I'll pop that into the comments here as well. And guys, hope you found that helpful. Stay tuned. We've got a ton of events coming up. So check out on the Pivot Wealth website, www.pivotwealth.com.au. Hope you guys have found that helpful.